A tax freight train is bearing down on your retirement. To protect yourself, you'll have to harness the power of zero.
Welcome to the Power of Zero show. I am your host, David McKnight, best-selling author of The Power of Zero, Look Before You LERP, The Volatility Shield, and Tax-Free Income for Life. If you are looking for someone to help you navigate all of the pitfalls that stand between you and the 0% tax bracket, please head over to davidmcknight.com. Happy to hook you up with a member of our elite POZ advisor group, among the very best tax-free retirement specialists in the nation, trained, vetted, qualified personally by me. If you are a financial advisor looking to level up your game, head over to powerzero.com, opt into the 3-part video series. Happy to have a chat with you. You can always follow me on Twitter at McKnight & Co. I often make updates or put forth commentary on changes in tax code and new perspective on retirement planning. If you would like to buy any of my books, you can do so in single copy at Amazon, wherever you buy fine books, or in bulk at davidmcknightbooks.com. Okay, today we're going to talk about the latest developments in the Joe Biden's signature legislative package here. And if you're a fan of this package, the news I have for you is not good. The package is basically on life support, and Democrats are scrambling to find a way to pay for it. But it's increasingly looking like there's not even going to be a package to pay for. So let me just give you a couple of quick updates. The stars of the show here, the people who are really pulling all the strings, and Joe Biden has famously said, look, when you only have 50 votes in the Senate, then every senator is a president, right? Every senator wields extraordinary power. And those two people that are wielding that power at this point, as you know, if you've listened in on past podcasts, are Joe Manchin out of West Virginia and Senator Krysten Sinema out of Arizona. Let's talk about Joe Manchin real quick. Joe Manchin has really clamped down on how much he has been willing to pay for this package. Of course, the Democrats have been asking for $3.5 trillion. He has gone as low as $1.5 trillion in terms of what his ceiling is. And that has elicited the ire of well-positioned members of his party. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has lambasted him on public and social media. Bernie Sanders has even gone so far as to publish an editorial in Joe Manchin's home newspaper, urging him to adopt the plan. And so, as of right now, Joe Manchin has not taken all of this friendly fire very well. He has basically said, I no longer have a $1.5 trillion ceiling on this package. My ceiling is now zero. In other words, he's sort of picking up his ball and going home. On the other side, we have Krysten Sinema, who has repeatedly expressed her disdain for raising taxes at all. She doesn't feel like it's a good idea. And she continues to get lambasted by members of her own party as well. So we're now in a position where Joe Manchin doesn't want to pay for anything. This is sort of his response. He may come back off of that, but as of right now, his ceiling went from $1.5 trillion to zero. And Krysten Sinema has basically said she's not interested in any sort of tax increases at all. She's not interested in increasing corporate taxes. She's not interested in increasing individual income tax rates. And so with all this as a backdrop, Congress has sort of gone to an ace in the hole. And they're basically turning their attention towards a different kind of a tax. Now, this is the information I'm giving you is coming from a number of different articles, all of which will be posted in show notes. But basically, this is what it looks like. Billionaires could be taxed on unrealized capital gains on their liquid assets. And basically, this is applying to anybody that has $1 billion or more of assets, and anybody who is reporting $100 million in income for 3 consecutive years. That's not very many people, by the way. It's only 700 people. It's the 700 richest people in the country. It's 0.0002% of the population. And here's the key. And this is, I think, why this is doomed for failure. It's only going to generate $200 billion in revenue over the next decade. It would cover stocks, but it would also cover real estate as well. Senator Elizabeth Warren basically said, hey, look, raising the tax rate is not going to cause Jeff Bezos to pay a penny more. Okay, because remember how Jeff Bezos does this is his net worth goes up when the price of Amazon stock goes up, but he doesn't have to pay tax on it as it goes up because that's basically a deferred tax. He doesn't have to pay until he realizes the gain, which is when he sells it, which who knows if or when he may ever do that. Now, Democrats are not calling this a wealth tax. They're basically calling it an unrealized capital gains tax. Take a listen to what Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen had to say about this when asked about it by Jake Tapper from CNN.
Do you think that a wealth tax will be part of it? And can you explain what that would look like?
Well, I think what's under consideration is a proposal that Senator Wyden and the Senate Finance Committee have been looking at that would impose a tax on unrealized capital gains on liquid assets held by extremely wealthy individuals, billionaires. I wouldn't call that a wealth tax, but it would help get at capital gains, which are an extraordinarily large part of the incomes of the wealthiest individuals. And right now, escape taxation until they're realized, and often they're unrealized and at death, benefit from so-called step-up of basis. So it's not a wealth tax, but a tax on unrealized capital gains of exceptionally wealthy individuals.
So basically what Janet Yellen is saying is that this is not a wealth tax because where they're not levying a tax on the entire net worth of a wealthy person. So for example, if Jeff Bezos is worth $200 billion, Elizabeth Warren during her presidential run had said, look, we need a wealth tax on anybody who has wealth more than 50 million. We're going to take 2% per year of their wealth. So in that scenario, Jeff Bezos would pay $4 billion per year, or whatever that turns out to be, anything above and beyond the 50 million. So basically $4 billion per year, every year. That really sort of sunk her campaign. I don't think that was a winning strategy. People don't like to be taxed on their wealth if there's no gain that goes along with it. How does Jeff Bezos pay for his lifestyle if he's not liquidating all of this stock? Because remember, he has a controlling interest in Amazon. If he starts liquidating all this stock, he may get to the point where he liquidates so much that he loses his controlling interest in Amazon. So what Jeff Bezos does, in order to spend money and to pay for his lifestyle, he doesn't liquidate stock. What he does is he borrows money using his Amazon stock as collateral. And that's what he uses to spend on his lifestyle. So he'll borrow money all day long if it means that he can preserve his stock holdings and maintain a controlling interest in his company. So obviously, this proposal has all sorts of headwinds. They've asked Krysten Sinema to weigh in on this. I think this is a naked attempt to appeal to Krysten Sinema. But Krysten Sinema has not yet opined on what she thinks about this billionaire tax. It could be that when all the dust settles, she doesn't like that either. She doesn't seem to like any types of increases in tax. The biggest challenge is going to be, of course, getting the votes. No Republican's going to vote for it. And Krysten Sinema is, in my opinion, probably not likely to vote for it. So that only gets them to 49 votes. And if you don't even have a simple majority, then you're basically stuck. Critics of the plan say it will force billionaires to retreat from the stock market, where evaluating assets is easier, and into more opaque markets such as real estate and art. And I can totally see this happening. I can totally see billionaires with all of their resources and all of their attorneys and accountants that are very good at thinking outside the box. I can see these billionaires repositioning their assets so as to avoid that tax on unrealized capital gains in their stock portfolios. Here is the real issue, though. The real issue is this tax only generates $200 billion. Remember, Joe Biden's goal was to say, if we push through a human infrastructure plan, it's going to be totally paid for. Well, they have since abandoned any corporate tax increases. They since abandoned any individual tax increases, and they're putting all of their chips on taxing billionaires. The problem is this approach only raises $200 billion of revenue. So if somehow, some way, they were somehow able to warm back up to Joe Manchin and say, we love you, we apologize for all the bad things that we said about you, and he ends up adopting the 1.5 or a 2.5 or even somehow, some way, a 3.5, they wouldn't have any way to pay for it. They would have $200 trillion that would be realized over 10 years. But where would they get the rest of the money? They probably have to borrow, which of course just tax right on top of all the national debt, which compounds all of the other issues we've been talking about in all of our other episodes. Nancy Pelosi had this to say about it. She said, the billionaires tax has an appeal, but it doesn't produce that much money. She indicated on Sunday the tax plan could be laid out as soon as Monday, but congressional sources say it is still being finalized. So to me, all of this sounds like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. It sounds like this whole enterprise is sort of sinking fast. They don't have the votes to push through the legislation. Even if they were to get the votes to raise taxes on billionaires, it doesn't even come close to paying for a total price tag that would be, for a meaningful package from the Democrats' perspective. So in conclusion, where does all of this leave people who are trying to safeguard their hard-earned retirement savings from the impact of higher taxes? Well, with Krysten Sinema and Joe Manchin sort of on the outs with the Democratic Party, the real question becomes, what is to become of individual income tax rates? Remember, the reason why I've been so focused on the fate of this $3.5 trillion human infrastructure package is because as that package goes, so goes the tax legislation. All of Joe Biden's proposed tax increases are tied to this bill because that increased revenue that comes from his package is supposed to go to be earmarked for all of this new spending. So what's to become of the individual tax rates? What's to become of the 22% tax bracket? What's to become of the 24% tax bracket, which we have repeatedly said are absolutely key in helping to get you to the 0% tax bracket? Well, remember, we have to have the ability to predict what tax rates are going to be, because as of right now, we have a choice. We can either assume that tax rates are going to expire in 2026, meaning Joe Biden gets nothing. They are unable to get any extension on the existing Trump tax cuts, in which case we have 5 years to get money shifted to the tax-free bucket. We don't want, however, to shift over 5 years only to bump up into a tax bracket that gives us heartburn along the way, only to realize after the fact that we had 9 years to shift all along, which would have allowed us to stretch that tax liability out over a longer period of time, allowing us to stay in a much lower tax bracket. Now, on the other hand, we don't want to plan for 9 years only to find out that taxes are going up in 5 years and then end up in a scenario where we didn't do as much shifting as we needed to, and we still have a lot of money sitting in our tax deferred bucket when tax rates go up for good. And so the big thing that has yet to be resolved is even if Joe Biden doesn't get anything else, will he be able to extend, as part of some bill, will he be able to extend the Trump tax cuts on the middle class, or will he just not get anything at all? Because remember, he wants badly to increase tax rates on the rich, on the wealthy. He wants to take that highest marginal tax bracket from 37 to 39.6. However, Krysten Sinema is vehemently opposed to this. And so the only way for Joe Biden to really be able to start taxing the rich is to let the Trump tax cuts expire in 2026. My sense is that's what's going to happen. He's just going to let these things expire in 2026, in which case we now have 5 years during which to get this heavy lifting done, to get our dollars systematically repositioned from tax deferred to tax free. So I think that we're going to find out one way or the other in the next couple of weeks. Remember, the closer we get to midterms, I said this a few weeks ago, the longer this legislation stays out there, the more it's sort of like fish. The longer it hangs out there, the more it starts to stink. And so the more time that passes where Joe Biden fails to push through this legislation, the less likely anything is going to be adopted, because nobody wants to sign on to a really controversial piece of legislation in the immediate lead up to midterms, because that's the type of thing that gets you voted out of office when you vote for controversial things. And nobody wants to contribute to this idea that the Democratic Party is in disarray. So interesting things are afoot, and the drama just keeps coming. It just keeps getting thicker and thicker. And so what are you going to do? Well, I would suggest that you stay tuned to the Power Zero show, where we will bring you the latest updates on all of this legislation and explain in crystal clear terms how this will impact your retirement planning. Once again, if you need help navigating all of this, head on over to DavidMcKnight.com, happy to hook you up with a member of our elite POZ advisor group, among the very best tax-free retirement planning specialists in the nation, trained, vetted, qualified personally by me. If you are a financial advisor who wants to integrate all of this into your practice, head over to powerzero.com, opt into our 3-part video series, at which point you will have a chance to set up a call with us, and we would be happy to chat with you. Thanks for being on the podcast today, and we will look forward to chatting with you same time next week.